Oh, I should disable the waiting room. Cool. Hello, everyone. Hello, Tommy.
Hey, Megan. How's it going?
Good.
Liking the background?
Thank you. You know, they took my beautiful sunshine away, so.
Oh.
How is it in Edmonds? Is it still sunny up there?
It is actually.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to rain soon, but I'm gonna hope to actually get outside before then. So
Nice. Very nice.
yeah.
There's the clock.
The bell strikes 2.
Yeah. So before we kind of start, while we're waiting for some other people to join us, does anyone have any questions about their proposals that are due this Friday? You're welcome to come off mute and ask them, or just say hello. Cool. Hi, Sam. How are you?
Hi, Megan. I'm pretty good. Actually, I do have a question about the proposal. I'm just about to unmute myself.
Oh,
So,
sure.
like, my team and I were talking about the budget that we're going to have, for the ASL and also the foreign language interpretation. So, do we have like a set amount of budget, for each team that we cannot exceed, like a number that we cannot go over, like, since we have 5 teams and then.
So I would say that the way to look at it is that one idea should not cost half of our budget. So for example, if all of your ideas combined come in at around $5,000, I can work with that. If you have one company that you're wanting to work with that is going to cost us $5,000 and above, that idea is probably not going to be financially feasible. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think for our idea, it's going to be way less than $5,000. So
Great.
that's for sure. Yeah, and also one follow up is that like I know that we each team will have a presentation on week 5. So do we have a time, like a specific time on that? Because my team members are sort of wondering.
Yeah, actually, thank you for bringing that up, Sam. I was going to propose that instead of having presentations, it would make more sense for Anu and I to meet with each of the groups and kind of go over with you our thinking and recommendations about which ideas we're going to move forward with for graduation. Because when I thought back to the request to have you present, I realized I didn't want you to spend a lot of time presenting on ideas that we weren't going to actually follow through with, because that wouldn't be fair to you, because I know that you have spent a lot of time already on this proposal. So I didn't want to ask you to do an additional assignment where you would present on ideas that we can't execute. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so just to double check, like, this is gonna be like a more casual meeting, we just go over everything and then like we don't need to do like a slide deck or something like that.
Yeah, it's going to be very casual. What I am planning on doing is, your proposals are due end of day tomorrow. I will spend some time over the weekend and on Monday reviewing the ideas along with Anu and a couple of your classmates, which I will tell you about in a minute. And we will be kind of highlighting which ideas are the best, so that when we meet with you next week, we're able to tell you, okay, Sam, so really like this idea for ASL interpreting. This is a great vendor. Please feel free to move forward with this and let me know what you need in order to sign a contract. Does that make sense? So it's going to be more of a discussion than a presentation.
Yeah, sure. I think this is very clear. And then like if some of my team members are not here, I'll update them on this.
Yes, exactly. So what I will do is I will actually reach out to all the team leads to schedule these meetings, and not everyone on your team has to be present, but I do want to make sure that the leads are present, since you guys have done such a great job coordinating with your own members.
Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions? And I will of course put that all into the class notes from today, so everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
For the alternative part of the proposal, like your alternative idea, does that also need to have its own sections of like justification, or just kind of like a brief description of the alternative idea?
Just a brief description of the alternative idea is fine.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Any other questions or thoughts? Cool. So before we get started with Tommy, I want to let you know that the MA-PhD team will be shifting their focus a little bit, because after meeting with their stakeholders, they determined that there wasn't going to be as much work for them to do as they thought they were going to be doing. So that team is going to split. Ethan and Jeff are going to be handling the production aspect of the MA-PhD video, as well as helping them order some swag for their graduates. But Maddie Kraut and Abigail are going to be serving as part of our project management team, and they will be working with specific groups on helping us make sure that all the ideas blend together. So I will be adding them to your Slack channels so that they can get a sense of what you've been talking about. They will also be helping the team leads to coordinate all of their task management the task management aspect of the project. And so Anu and I are in the process of still selecting a good platform for your task management needs, but Maddie and Abigail will be kind of taking the lead in helping the team leads populate that platform with the various deadlines and responsibilities that team members will have. Like I said, you've already been doing a great job of coordinating that in Slack, but this will give us a more visual representation of what's going on. And to Anu's point that she made, I think last class, having that all laid out visually will really help us see where people might need the most amount of help. Because, and this is something that I'll touch on with Tommy in his presentation, sometimes your best intentions around outreach, in particular with people that you need materials from for video production, that can get pushed back because you're dealing with professionals, you're dealing with PhD students who are incredibly busy. And so sometimes that outreach portion can take a little bit longer than you think. And that's where Anu and I are happy to come and step in and lend our clout and say, I see that my students gave you this deadline, you haven't met the deadline, we really need it by this time, or it won't get done. So that's something that we'll be looking forward to working with next week as we head into our final project planning pre-phase before you start executing on ideas. And I'm sorry, my language skills are not great right now because it's Thursday afternoon. But anyway, any other questions or thoughts? Happy to go over any of that again. Like I said, I'll put it all in the class notes so everyone knows what's going on, but we still have some time before we start with Tommy. Cool. All right. Well, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our guest today. Tommy Ferguson is the graphic designer and videographer for the Department of Communication. He and I have worked together for, I want to say, at least the past 2.5, nearly 3 years.
It's coming up on 2 years.
Yeah, it's coming up on 3 years, and he is phenomenal. We in the Department of Communication are very fortunate to have an in-house graphic designer because other departments usually have to go through UW Central marketing when they want to put together flyers, announcements, or things for the website. But we have our own awesome Tommy to help us with all of that. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of interview Tommy, and we're going to talk through what moving a idea into graphic representation is like, and also what our process has been for producing videos, so that you have a sense of what that looks like, what steps are involved, and how much time you need to commit to that. So, Tommy, before we kind of start, I'd like you to introduce yourself to the class and just tell them a little bit about your background.
Sure. Well, as my screen says, my name is Tommy Ferguson. I've been with the Department of Communication for about 3 years now. It's kind of crazy to say. The last year has been interesting, for sure. But before that, I worked at a graduation company, doing caps, gowns, selling Letterman jackets, and doing a bit of graphic design. Before that, I was in college, so just like you guys. Some of my favorite things are have to do with video editing, branding, which is exactly what we're going to talk about today. And yeah, I don't know what else to say there other than I'm excited to be here and talk to you guys about what I do. So.
Thank you, Tommy. So my first question to you is, like you said, you've been here for nearly 3 years, and this year has been challenging in particular. What sort of strategies have you employed with your colleagues and your clients? Because you work with our faculty, our staff, and sometimes even our student organizations on a variety of projects. What sort of strategies have you employed for success in your endeavors?
Gotcha. Well, first off, I would say project management is huge. There are quite a few different ways that we communicate, whether it be via Slack, via Teams, email, and I'm sure there are quite a few other ones that I can't name at this moment in time. So it gets a little complicated to have all those channels of communication open. And so really having your own, whether it be a project management software that you use, or just a simple task list on your phone, can do wonders. Just so you have an idea of where you're at and how you prioritize your projects day in, day out. Personally, before the pandemic, I literally just used I think email and Trello, which are great, but I've had to implement some more things along the way, adding things to my phone as we're all kind of remote. So it's kind of a modge podge of things, but trying to basically funnel them into as little, kind of basically to do as little mental gymnastics as possible to keep it all in one place. It will do wonders because communication, it gets kind of scattered sometimes and you have to rein it in.
So how do you help, like, for example, me, because I know that sometimes my communication can get a little scattered. What do you do to kind of help your clients stay on track and on your timeline when it comes to these sort of projects?
Yeah, well, typically I have specific timelines for projects. I always ask about deadlines because you never know when someone wants a project and when they want it. So being upfront about, when does this absolutely need to be done by? Because kind of these arbitrary dates don't necessarily work all the time. And then people are kind of wondering, hey, where's this, graphic, or where's this? I figured I would have it, a week ago. And you just have to be very upfront and very forward with okay, I have this week, right? I have this much time allotted to all these projects. Let me see what I can do here. I need to ask this person when this project needs to get done because I have a little extra time here that I can place that. Sometimes your week it's pretty busy, and so you have to kind of accommodate and compensate for some of those times. So I think the biggest thing really is communication and seeing where people are, seeing their project timeline, and whether it's realistic to kind of what your schedule looks like during the weeks. So.
And the other challenge that I know that you face sometimes is non-responsiveness, particularly when you need feedback from a faculty member or a staff member or whomever you're working with. And you need that in a timely manner because you can't move on to the next step of a project until you hear back from them. So what strategies do you have when you can't get a hold of someone? Do you just move on? Do you try to compromise? I'm curious how you handled that situation.
Yeah, so for me, I give it a few days, right? Sometimes if a project doesn't have a super tight deadline, I will wait a week. Normally my emails remind me after a week of non-responsiveness from the other person. So it notifies me and then I can reach out to them once more. That is one thing I really like about Google. Gmail is awesome. Use that for all my communication as far as emails go. So that's super helpful. It kind of depends on the project. Sometimes we have to pivot a little bit, and that's just something we have to do. So having some sort of backup in place, I know that's not always possible, but say you're working on a video project and you have 4 people that you want to interview for this project, have a backup. Because if you don't, you might run into challenges and it might push back the end date. So you just want to be aware of that. Not everybody responds in a timely fashion. Some faculty are gone for the summer, but they still have projects going on. So you have to be aware of, where they're at. And sometimes if they don't respond, you just have to, kind of change directions just a tiny bit. And having a team really helps with that because you're not just bouncing ideas back and forth in your own head, you're bouncing it back and forth between a team that probably has a little more information about maybe where the faculty is currently or, alternative ideas on how to move forward. So.
Great. And so I know that your job encompasses more than just graphic design and videos, but those are the 2 areas I want to focus on for this class. So you've done graphics for our events now for, like I said, nearly 3 years. But a large significant project that you recently took on was helping us with some department specific rebranding because we wanted to move away from the more traditional UW logo and create a visual language that really spoke to who we are as a department and what our values were. So can you kind of walk us through the process of creating a logo out of, just someone's impression or vision or idea, how you move from words into graphics?
Absolutely. I actually can share my screen here if that's possible. All right, the screen right here. So let me move this over here. So this looks very similar to the brand guidelines that we have just for the first 2 pages, and then it goes into the process in which we went through to create this new brand identity for UW COM. So you got to start somewhere, right? You got to know, your mission statement, your goals, like who you are as a department. That's kind of important. And part of that process, maybe you don't have a mission statement quite yet. And I will kind of go into that in the next couple of slides here. But it is very helpful to kind of know where the brand was before, if there was a brand, in order to move forward with the updated version. So essentially this information right here, committed to rigorous relevant scholarship. And that's been a huge staple for our new rebrand. I know Christine has been adamant about putting that in, kind of where we can fit it. But currently our logo mark is this C, and inside the C is a speech bubble, kind of the crux of the design, if you will. So in a sense, my approach to this, and this isn't necessarily an official, official text quite yet. We haven't, fully hashed everything out. Haven't got Megan's, final say so on this, but essentially my thought process behind this was being part of the ever evolving conversations around us and kind of what that means. So the next part here is the words. Obviously, we have to know where we're going and how to get there, right? So obviously we start with the word communication. And this is before we even have any sort of graphics. I know we had the previous, Department of Communication logo, things like that, which is just, generally UW. But you got to start somewhere, right? So branching out from the word communication, normally the process would be you would list 3 experiences that you want your audience to feel in terms of your brand identity. So, whether it be Sprint, T-Mobile, or Department of Communication, what do you want them to feel when you actually show them your logo, or they kind of get a feel for the department itself? When you're there, when you're part of the community, what do they feel? So, my 3 things, and I just kind of made this up on the fly because we didn't necessarily do this time around. The connection you feel while calling an old friend, the joy from hearing a story for the first time, and leaving a conversation with a sense of enlightenment. So I thought those kind of embodied a little bit of, what the process would be if we went this direction. We kind of started out with words in the first place, but in order to get those words first, typically you're going to go through the process of creating a word map, right? And so if we go back up here, so this is not from the Department of Communication. This is another project that I worked on. But essentially, from these 3 questions here, from these 3 experiences, you kind of parcel out 5 words, right? You can do more, you can do less, but typically 5 is a good starting point to where you can start to branch off other words from those words. So, something like community, connection, conversation, those would be 3 that would be really good to start with. And then you can kind of come in here and branch off from there. So beginning, start, now, fresh, new, that kind of thing. And your word map gets larger and larger, and so you have a better idea the more you actually expand. And this is really good to do with a team of people, and not just yourself, because a project like this involves many people and many hats. So you're just going to want to be aware of what other people's input is. A big one would be having maybe all 5 of these experiences, or 3 of these experiences. Each person in the group kind of answers those questions and then comes together at the end and really hashes out the 5 words that you really want to focus on. So essentially that's kind of where you would start here. From there, once you actually understand the feel for your logo, you can go into kind of your inspiration phase. So what I did with the UW-COM logo was obviously go on Pinterest here. Pinterest is a great place to gain some inspiration for what you want the look and feel of your brand or your logo to look like, because they have so many examples of people that are doing things very similarly, or and even if you decide to put those 5 words in to Pinterest, you could probably get some cool logos about in regards to connection, or camaraderie, or camaraderie logo. Just search those words, see what you find, and you might be surprised and actually very excited that you have a direction to work with. So this essentially is just your mood board. You're gathering some inspiration here. The next slide here is to kind of go into this sketch phase, right? You can start with the digital if you feel more comfortable with that, but typically you're going to have a lot more fun and a more organic time going through the process of sketching things out. Even if you're not the best at sketching things, you can still get some really good ideas from it. And always keep in mind in the back of your head those 5 words and the words kind of branching out when you're creating these. So we have a few iterations here. Department of Communication, DFC, this is kind of an idea that kind of what was taken from the 4 pillars at UW. I don't know if you guys have been there thus far, but it's kind of that shape of things. It's very majestic, very academic. And so kind of branching out from that idea. Other various things, this C right here is where we started, and this is eventually the direction that we went with. But just to kind of, hash it out on paper is super, super helpful. So next, you kind of go into your digital iterations. So this is page 1. This is kind of the direction that we went in for the most part, but it's not exactly where we landed. So, using the word COM, as your beginning point. The second style was to use, kind of your starting letters, like your Department of C, and then the C outline. And this is similar to what we have now, except it does not have that kind of pen stroke in there. And obviously just, having those keywords in mind, putting those back in so that you kind of remember like what's going on there. So next would be this one. This one is one that we actually really liked, but it still felt a little old school, and we wanted to make things feel a little more modern and relevant to today. So we ended up going with these 4. Okay, and so the reason that we have 4 here, this one is a very shorthand version. So say we have some sort of mark. This can fit on a bottle cap. It can, shrink to a very, very small size. Similar to the UW, you can put it anywhere. It's even on Megan's background right now, which is awesome. It's very versatile. This one is a more shorthand version of the identity, UW.com, more of an internal facing representation of communication. And I hear it said quite a lot around campus, UW.com as an abbreviation. So we wanted to make sure that actually got in there, for internal purposes. Now our more forward facing brand identity, the one that we use the most is UW Communication here. And you can see it still has the C here. This is our mark specifically, but it also fits into the overall brand identity, which is awesome. So this one would be Department of Communication. If it was, completely outside, say, you had some other university coming in, looking at our events, we would probably use something like this. This is official. This is very much what's on our website, the header of our website today. And this is what we use a lot of our flyers with currently. So that is kind of the overall process from start to finish. You start with ideas, words, sketches, inspiration, and then you go to the digital portion of things where you actually hash out with your team what works, what doesn't work, and you come to the conclusion of something like this.
Awesome. Thank you, Tommy.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
would you be willing to share those slides with me so that I can upload them to our campus site as well?
Absolutely.
Great. So you will have a time for questions, everyone. I just want to move on to the second half of my discussion with Tommy, which is video production. Because one of the things that we've found, even around events, is that video content is the form of content that gets the greatest level of engagement when shared online, when shared as part of our newsletters. So a lot of our events usually are accompanied with some sort of recording or video that we share after the fact. So let's take graduation, for example, because last year, in addition to working with the marching order platform to produce a website, we wanted to produce a series of videos that enabled faculty to offer their congratulations to the class of 2020. So could you kind of talk us through, and I will assist you as needed, as to what the process is for getting a video produced? Like, what are the steps involved?
Absolutely. We had a meeting the other day, and Anu was so kind to remind me of a few of the steps that I had missed. So I will be including those here. First off, you want to start off with video parameters. So, everybody has a different camera these days. Everybody has different specs on their phone or their laptop or their, DSLR, if you still use that. And so whatever you start with, you just know that you're going to start with a variety of different types of video. It could be like even different style of files. You can have an MP4 file, you can have a QuickTime file, whatever. But making sure that people upload the correct, maybe not aspect ratio, but as high quality as possible. Otherwise, you're going to be working with a very low quality video at the end of it. Your video is only as good as your weakest video at the end of the day, because if you have to stretch it out and make it very pixelated, it's gonna kind of take away from the overall video. Also, one of the things, so just to kind of reiterate, 720 is the lowest HD possible. So, the bare minimum, if you can get, people to put their phone sideways, if they decide to film that way, having it that way is great. If not, there are a few tricks to compensate for that. So if they do, kind of your vertical, you can compensate for that. That's no issue. The biggest issue though, you can't correct is audio. You're going to want very clear, crisp audio at the end of the day. If not, you're going to have to try to figure things out and, maybe have a voiceover. There are many ways to correct it, but it takes a lot more time and patience in the process.
So Tommy, before you go on, I just want to bring up
Yes.
an observation. What you're talking about is producing a compilation video, as it were, in the middle of a pandemic, because the reality that we've had to face is that we can no longer film in person. And so we have to help those who we want to feature in the video know how to essentially film themselves and submit that video to us so that we can edit it. Is that a fair observation?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the clarification there. Apologies if I didn't, process through that as well. But essentially, yes, that is correct, Megan. Typically in a pandemic, we can't really get together and film on the same camera. So everybody's going to have something different to bring to the table as far as what they have to say, also the quality of video. So just to be aware of that. Typically what we have done in the past is use a Google Drive to collect all the footage in one. Some people just give the footage, some people do audio and footage. So you'll have to sync that up later if they decide to do that. Usually doesn't happen, but it is a possibility. So just making sure that your Google Drive file is accessible to everybody. The link is, accessible to be able to upload things to. So anybody with a link is able to do that. Otherwise, you're going to run into some issues and some emails coming in about, hey, how do I do this? Like, it's not working for me. So just making sure, one, you have enough room on your Google Drive, because I know, faculty and staff have enough, but I'm not entirely sure if students do. I don't know if it's a pro account for students there. So just to be aware of how much memory you have with your Google Drive. Another aspect which is super helpful in terms of moving forward is getting faculty or whoever is producing these videos or filming these to name the files correctly. So having some sort of system that works for you, it doesn't all have to be the same way that I do it, but typically having a first and last name of the person that's actually, doing the video, because eventually you probably want to put lower thirds, which are, little name tags, kind of like we have on our Zoom videos. You're going to want people to know who's actually speaking. So that's just, something to be aware of. If they spell their name differently, maybe reach out to them an email, see what they're, what they prefer to be called, and how they prefer it to be spelled. But yeah, a naming system for your files. So first and last name, maybe the date, some way to differentiate each video from one another. And that's super important because when you actually upload it and put it into something like Premiere, editing software, it's going to be a lot easier to move files around. Typically, when in Premiere, I have at least 3 different folders that I use, one for video, one for audio, and one for graphics. So just to be aware of that, it can get a little messy if you don't know what you're doing. And if you're starting out kind of with messy files, it might be a nightmare to go in and rename things and adjust things. And, it's kind of a mess. So it'll save you a lot of time if you specify what you need your file name to be. So that's good. Another thing is when talking to faculty or whoever is creating these videos and uploading them, you want to make sure that they have enough time to actually film these videos and upload them. I'd say the bare minimum, typically in what I've experienced, is bare minimum of 2 weeks, because people are going to slack off and not do it till the last minute. And even then, they'll get it to you like 2 or 3 days late. So if you're running on a tight deadline and you think you can edit through stuff in a week, you should probably think again, because it's going to take a lot more than that. I typically, if it's a project that is already pre-produced, like say a colloquia, all you really need is the audio, the video, and then you can like rush through it. But something like this, where you have a bunch of hands in the pot, you're going to need some ample time to collect all the video, at least 2 weeks, and then probably at least 2 weeks to edit through everything, because it's not just the first draft that's going to be the one that you go with. Typically, you're going to have different iterations. You're going to have stakeholders. You're going to have people who want to view the video and process through it. I have never had a video that didn't have at least one revision. So you're going to want to make sure that you calculate enough time for that specifically.
So Tommy, real quick, when setting deadlines, particularly for other stakeholders, do you recommend, in fact, kind of having 2 deadlines in mind, the deadline that you give them versus the absolute, what I've always called the drop dead deadline? Whereas if you need something no later than, say, March 15th, the deadline that you actually propose is March 7th, so you have a bit of a window for wiggle room?
Yeah, I would completely agree. Having at least an extra week to work on things in the event that people don't get back to you in time is super important, especially if these people are kind of the main point of your video. You want to just be aware that people have busy lives. I know staff do, faculty do, even students as well. I know what it's like to be a student. I know what it's like to take 21 credits a quarter. And I know what it's like to, be a part of something that you don't necessarily feel like you have time for. So with that said, yeah, I think 2 deadlines is probably an awesome way to go. One is the initial deadline, and then the final one is you're out of luck. This is like the last straw. So really just accounting for all these different things that could go wrong, so that in the end, your product doesn't get pushed out, because you obviously have stakeholders in the game that want, X by a certain time, and you don't want to disappoint, because that reflects badly on you, and it also reflects badly on your team as well. So
I just wanted to add one thing here. So in terms of the deadlines, there is obviously the faculty and the people who are contributing to the video, but there's also the person who is producing the video, which again we will know by Monday. When we will go through all the proposals, what that is going to look like. I just wanted to kind of caveat that by saying that, so Tommy might say that, okay, the total production time for after I get the raw material is 2 weeks. However, you have to take into account that Tommy's going to be working on other things. So that's the other, so if you need your video, say your MA PhD video, you need it by June 9th, you can't assume that it will get produced if Tommy has it 2 weeks before June 9th, because he's going to have a lot of other things to do. So communicating that early and making sure that you know exactly what all is on the actual video producer's plate as well, and then padding that deadline accordingly. Because this, again, when we're moving too fast, this is something that can happen. We're like, oh, he said 2 weeks, and so, but it may not be like just 2 weeks from before you need it. And also I'm happy to share, because I don't think I have deleted all those emails yet. I'm happy to share a template of that outreach to faculty for getting their videos, because we also came up with like a list of leading questions, because the other thing was that, we wanted them to be between, I don't remember if it was 60 to 90 or 30 to 60 seconds. But so yeah, we had that kind of limitation. And then so we gave them a couple of leading questions to make sure that they frame it and it's within that time frame. So I'm happy to share that template of, so it was essentially, here are your leading questions, here are guidelines from Tommy on how to film yourself, and here's the link to where you upload it, and then bold, all the deadlines, and and then keep reminding people. So I'm happy to share that template, because I'm 100% sure I haven't deleted those emails.
I know you haven't, because I have them saved in my files as well, so. Okay, sorry, Tommy, didn't mean to interrupt. So you set the parameters, and then you've set the deadlines. What happens next? What software do you use? What are your processes once you've received the videos?
Yes, so typically I would go into Premiere Pro, right? That's the first software that I would actually use. I would make sure that the files are the way they are. Everything is in order, organized by name, and all that stuff is good, so that when I bring everything into Premiere Pro, it's not going to be a hassle to try to collect all the data and put it in their prospective files or folders. Once I start that process, typically there is some sort of storyline for most of our projects that we are pursuing here. Sometimes it's something like the thank you video, right? We have 4 people coming in and speaking, and maybe Christine Harold comes in at the very beginning and makes some worthy honorable mentions, thanking people about being a part of COM and being part of the community, things like that. So essentially we're working with 5 videos here, and splicing them in between each other, it takes time, right? And you're gonna have to go back and forth between your stakeholders, your team. And obviously there's a lot more that goes into it. You're gonna have to take into account like the audio portion of things. So, what kind of audio do you want? Do you want to do some sort of ambient noise, or do you want to go with like a music track in the background? Typically that's what we do. And it works out really well to set the stage for the mood of what we're doing. And there are many sites. Typically you want to go with something that's Creative Commons. You don't really want to run into any issues as far as copyright goes. In the end, typically you don't have to worry about that as students, but in official capacity working for the UW, you still have to kind of keep those into consideration if you have a pro YouTube account. So yeah, it's a conversation back and forth. You need to develop kind of a storyline for what you want the video to look like. Typically you have in those cases kind of a script that you're working with. So, you know what other people are saying in the video, and you kind of make executive decisions about what would fit best where. And sometimes you can splice videos in between each other. Sometimes the videos stay as long as they are and then move on to the next person. Sometimes there are transition shots, fade ins, fade outs, things like that. And this would be a very simple edit that I'm explaining here, and then just underlaying some music, producing it. And always, when you're actually exporting this stuff, say you have a first draft already completed, what you're going to want to do is probably export in not HD, probably something like 480p, which is relatively low, but people can still see what you're doing. Obviously, if you have to like overlay some graphics into your videos, sometimes people come back and they want that kind of thing in addition. So, it's going to be a back and forth conversation between you and your team. So when you upload, first off, you're not going to upload the highest resolution because that's a waste of time. You want people to see what you're doing and what it looks like from start to finish before you go in and export the final draft, which would be the highest resolution possible. As far as like once you get your picture locked, I don't know if any of you are familiar with that term, but picture lock is essentially you have all your video from start to finish completed. It looks great. This is exactly what you want people to say, all that stuff. But sometimes in those cases, you're going to want to go in and adjust the audio afterwards. So you're mastering the audio. So what I do personally in a lot of cases is take the audio file, export all the video as an audio file, say whether it be like a WAV file, an AIF file, or an MP3. And then I take it into a software like Audacity or Adobe Audition, and start to master the audio to make sure all the audio levels are kind of synced up. They're in the same kind of negative 12 decibels. That kind of zone is always the best. Once you kind of have that, you have your audio underneath, you have your music, you have all the vocals kind of together. But again, you want to make sure you have picture lock before you actually start mastering this audio, because if you have to go back and make adjustments, you've just edited audio that's completely unusable. So you want to be aware of that. Start from, kind of a logical process of like, okay, this is what I need to do first, this is what I need to do second, and then, finally get to the export process, which is, it's going to take a little bit of time. So if you're like kind of in a hurry and you need to upload it within like an hour, make sure you have at least like 5 hours to upload, because you have your export process and then you have your upload process to YouTube, which also takes about as much time. So
yeah, I was going to say, if you only have an hour to upload, don't, because it's not going to happen.
Yep.
And I just want to kind of make clear to the class that while working with Tommy on these videos, if you do decide to do any sort of video product for the graduation, we're not expecting you all to do any of the editing or the sound mastering. That's why we have Tommy, and that's why he's wonderful. Where your role will be as the project manager, so to speak, is working with him on the timeline, on the script, on the vision, on the edits and the revisions. So just want to reassure everyone that if you don't have those video making skills, which I myself don't stress about that, because you'll be in excellent hands with Tommy. So Tommy, I wanted to move on now to questions from the students and utilize the rest of our time there. So if anyone has questions for Tommy, you are welcome to raise your hand, come off mute. This is now your time. So thank you, Tommy, for those great presentations. And
absolutely.
What questions do you all have for our wonderful graphic designer / videographer? Sam.
Yes, thank you very much, Tommy, for being here. And I'm like my role in the class is to mainly help out the accessibility and the equity and all the accommodations for ASL interpreting and all those. So like my question is about like how can we, how can we sort of integrate any like live components of ASL interpreting or live captioning into like a video like this? I'm not very clear on how to do that, so I want to ask for more clarifications before we move on with our partners and collaboration.
Gotcha. So are we considering doing a live portion? Is that what we're
We may be, but Sam, one thing that I can tell you that we've done with our videos sometimes in the past is we will auto-generate captions utilizing YouTube. And then what happens is I will put on headphones, go into those auto-generated captions and make corrections to the script myself. So that's one way that we caption videos after the fact. When it comes to integrating live captioning, that is something that I assume Tommy would work with a third-party vendor on, because full disclosure, we have not done that on any of our videos before. But Tommy, do you have any insights to share about live captioning?
Yeah, I don't know if I've worked with live captioning before, but I can imagine it would be a similar process to kind of integrating the visuals of the ASL interpreter into the actual video, probably, on the corner, just kind of as, I'm sure you've seen other people on YouTube channels, things like that. They have their little kind of face in the corner while they play their video games. It would probably be something very similar to that. As far as the software to integrate that, whether it would be done in post-production or live, it kind of just depends. So I would assume that the live stream would look a lot like, your typical YouTube gamer.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Great question, Sam. Other questions?
I see something in the chat here.
Oh, that's just, I shared the link to Creative Commons.
Sounds
So I have a question, Tommy. What is the most common error or challenge that you encounter when doing graphic design or video work?
Common error, ironically, communication. Sometimes people use words that don't necessarily all come together in the other person's mind. So I think the biggest thing is having a clear understanding and a clear explanation of what you would like to have done, because there are times where emails come in and, I'm able to process through a lot of what they say, but there are certain things, certain aspects, whether it be insider knowledge that I just don't have, or, this, that, and the other thing, you name it. If you don't clarify certain things, if you use acronyms or, things that I have to look up at the end of the day that I'm not familiar with, I haven't read that article, or, this, that, and the other thing. I'd say that would probably be one of the biggest challenges that I face as a graphic designer, is that, people just aren't necessarily clear about their communication. I'd say that's the big one for sure.
And on the fun side of things, what do you enjoy about your job? What are those moments that make you go, yes, this is the right thing I should be doing with my life?
Funny enough, it is actually working with students. And I don't get to do that as often as I would like, especially in the pandemic. But I worked a lot with COM499 before the pandemic started, and oftentimes students would come to me asking questions about technology. I do teach workshops, which are awesome because I'm able to answer questions. I was able to answer questions in person, but it's via email, which isn't exactly the best way to do things. But in person, being able to process through video content with other students, be able to give suggestions and kind of be either a listening ear or some sort of a resource. That's really something that brightens my day at the end of the day, because there are so many great ideas that you students have that I probably wouldn't have even thought of, and interviews that you have with certain people, what you're passionate about. You know, it's my privilege to be able to kind of see what's going on in your head and how you process through things, because it really does make I don't know, my job a little bit more fun. You know, I work a lot with graphics and, you know, the faculty, but to work with students having various ideas like that, it's pretty cool. It's pretty awesome.
Great. Well, you'll definitely be getting to work with our students in the next few weeks. So I hope that is successful for everyone involved. Any other questions for Tommy before we let it? Oh, Kevin has a question. Are you planning on hosting workshops next year?
I do. I am actually. Hopefully, once you know everything is figured out as far as the pandemic goes, we'll go back to doing workshops in person, which I very much enjoy. I think these days it's been a little more complicated to kind of get workshops on the schedule. I've made in-class visits a handful of times this quarter and last quarter, the quarter before. And so typically those are like, you know, the workshops that I've been doing as of recent. But hopefully in the future we can kind of start up some workshops again. So.
And just so our students know, what sort of platforms or software or hardware even have you led workshops on?
Pretty much all Adobe products as far as the main ones go. So Illustrator, you've got InDesign, Premiere, After Effects, Audition, Lightroom, and Photoshop. Those are the big ones. Sometimes, you know, we do external that aren't actually Adobe, like Audacity. That's basically a free digital audio workstation, which I very much enjoy. I think most of the students do as well. Also, you know, normally in person, we run the checkout system. So we have a lot of cameras, video equipment, audio equipment, things like that. So I do actually do workshops on those as well. You know, it's a lot easier to make sure that people actually understand how things work when you're in person. You can press the physical buttons with them versus, you know, watching a YouTube video essentially, which is what Zoom kind of is sometimes. So.
Absolutely. Any other questions for Tommy? Okay, great. Well, thank you again, Tommy, and I am sure we will hear more from you very soon. I know that Anu and I will certainly be in contact with you, and we'll be working on the MA PhD video with you, Jeff, and Ethan. So yeah, looking forward to it. If you have any questions for Tommy, you can find his web address on our website, his email address on our website, and I can also share that as part of the classroom notes. But thanks, Tommy. We look forward to working with you. Thank you for taking this time to come speak with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Megan. Thank you, Anu. And thank you all.
Great. Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So before we end class today, we have 2 more minutes. Do you all have any other questions about the proposal, about kind of what happens next with graduation? Yeah, what the next month will look like? Sam?
Yes, I just have a very quick question about next week. So like my team is trying to figure out, you know, like what's like the content side is going to be, you know, for graduation, like, you know, who's giving speeches, you know, who are the speakers and those kind of stuff, so that we can arrange, you know, more interpretation. So my question is, you know, when will you know, the class will be able to know, you know, what, you know, about the contents or the plans of those?
Hopefully no later than Tuesday. Because what we'll do is we'll evaluate the ideas, we will select which ones are best, and I will write them up as one comprehensive project proposal, the same that I would do if I was actually just planning all of this myself and submitting a proposal to Christine Harold, who's our chair, for her approval. So I will share that document with you all at the beginning of this week so that you have an idea of how many speakers we have, how many people are planning to participate, like faculty and things like that. So you will have a comprehensive overview of everything early next week.
All right, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Any other thoughts, questions, comments, concerns? All right, well then I wish you all a pleasant rest of your week. Again, as you're putting your final proposals together, if you have questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out to Anu and I. We are here and happy to help. And I cannot wait. I really I'm so excited to see what ideas you guys have and what we are going to be working with for this graduation ceremony. I think it's going to be amazing, and I thank you all. So have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend. Bye, everyone.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.